Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. My name's Cameron Bailey. I'm the CEO at TIFF, and I am your moderator today as well for this industry conference conversation. The industry conference is supported by Christie Digital, and the Toronto International Film Festival, our 50th edition, is presented by Rogers. Thanks so much for being here. It is my pleasure to introduce our next session, Visionaries, Donna Langley. Chairman of NBCUniversal Entertainment Studios, Donna Langley is one of Hollywood's most successful studio heads ever, and she's done it in one of the film industry's most challenging eras. A trailblazing executive and a driving force behind some of the most successful projects of our time, Donna spearheads decisions across the enterprise and oversees all entertainment programming and marketing across Peacock, Bravo, and NBC. She's a trusted partner to filmmakers, reinvigorating beloved franchises like Jurassic World and Fast and Furious, and she's been a champion of films that shape the cultural zeitgeist, including Oppenheimer, Get Out, Bridesmaids, and countless others. Today, Donna will discuss her expert perspective on navigating industry disruption, supporting emerging talent, and building innovative content strategies for global audiences. Our programming is made possible by the support of all of our sponsors and partners. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Rogers, our major sponsors, RBC and Visa, our major industry supporters, Ontario Creates and Telefilm Canada, and our media partner, The Hollywood Reporter, for supporting the Visionaries program. And now, please join me in welcoming to the stage, Donna Langley. Welcome back to Toronto, Donna.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
I'm really glad that you made the time this morning. You have had an extraordinary career, and there's lots more to come, I am sure. I want to talk about one of the things that might drive the record success that you've had. I imagine that part of it is just running a company, managing teams, all of that. But a lot of it comes down to vision and taste and judgment, because this is a creative industry. And I wonder, how have you honed your judgment when it comes to something as variable as storytelling?
Wow, good morning. It really does start with gut instinct for me. I think I don't want to be too simplistic about it, but I kind of know it when I see it, and I know when something's right, and I intuitively know when something's not right, either on the page or on the screen, an idea. One of the things I think as a company, as a creative team, we have done really well, though, is sort of zigging when everyone else is zagging.
Interesting.
And also finding white space, the areas where no one has traversed yet, or not for some time. And, an example of that is a movie like Girls Trip. When Will Packer, the producer, came in to talk to us about that, it was a pitch, and we brought it in the room. And it was because we knew that, the R-rated comedy had been the domain mostly of sort of white men, and then with Bridesmaids, white women. And we just hadn't seen that for, an audience of color. And it just felt like, oh, wow. Again, it was sort of an idea that we didn't know we were missing it until we heard it and saw it. So, we just thought that was a good idea. So, yeah.
In the room, does your whole team see that white space, that possibility, or is that you leading that?
Well, because some of them are here, I'm going to say it's all of us.
Well done.
No, it is. They're all brilliant.
Okay, excellent. You grew up in what you've described as a family of outsiders in the Isle of Wight in the UK, and you made an early decision to leave the UK for Los Angeles. You were an intern, I understand, and then an assistant, and then rose really quickly in the industry, it seems. And I have to ask you about one particular turning point, because I know it was pivotal in your career, but also because its central figure grew up not too far from here. And that's Austin Powers and Mike Myers from Scarborough, Ontario, part of Toronto. What did you bring to that project that you think made a difference?
Well, it was an underdog project. Every major studio had passed on it. It was an odd script. At the time, Mike Myers was at a point in his career which was, not as high as it had been or as it was about to be. And so, people doubted the sort of validity of it. And our company, New Line at the time, was a really fun place to work. It was very exciting because it was a mini studio and we didn't have all the opportunities that the big studios had. So we did have to create our own success, very much. It wasn't ever handed to us. And so this was a project that, a bunch of us did look at it, and there was a lot of naysayers in the room, but there were a couple of us that just said, no, this is so out there and so funny that we've got to grab it. But I do think some of it, for me, sensibility-wise, was I completely got the humor.
Right.
It's British and it's cultural, and and Britain and Canada, we're cousins, and close sensibility-wise, particularly in comedy. And so I do think that it just didn't seem that weird to me. It actually seemed pretty obvious.
Okay, and it worked so well.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about another one much more recently, the really titanic success of Oppenheimer, which in hindsight can look obvious. It is Christopher Nolan after all, and it's a big, big subject, but it's also period film, it's a drama. Those don't tend to do nearly as well. What were some of the key decisions you made to bring it to that success?
Well, there was, I'll say it really started with the script. And this is where I give my team a ton of credit, because I read the script first, but then when the key members of the team, so Peter Kramer is here, head of production, head of marketing, Michael Moses, when everybody read it, we all got it in the same way. And there was a lot of industry chatter about, people who had not read it, about exactly as you just described it, but we didn't see it that way. It was a brilliant script. It is one of the best scripts I've ever read. And it was deeply emotional for a number of different reasons. It was a human drama set against the most epic backdrop. And the thrill of it, and it was propulsive on the page, was the literal ticking clock. Right. And so those things were very clear in the reading of the script. And so I don't think any of us went into that decision, and again, of course, hindsight, but I never we just did not sweat that decision. It was, first of all, it was priced appropriately for what it was. It was a stellar cast, and I knew some of the people that Chris was going to cast before, we said we actually got the project. And we just knew that he was going to make something exciting and exhilarating. Now, the success that it went on to and how it hit the zeitgeist, of course, we didn't predict that. It could have done far less business at the box office and not won any of those awards, and we would have been just as happy. We're a lot happier that it did those other things, of course. But that was sort of our thinking going into it. So it's I don't want to be glib and say it just wasn't that difficult of a decision, but it wasn't. And we really wanted to be in business with Chris, specifically because he's one of a handful of directors who is so committed to the theatrical experience. Yes. And that, as where we are as an industry right now, is absolutely what we need, and we need to support that and encourage that, and also have that be part of our business plan. And so, all those ingredients helped it be an easier decision.
You mentioned how emotional the story was, just even on the page. And Christopher Nolan is often seen as a cerebral filmmaker. Some of us are still trying to figure out Tenet. But But talk to me more about the emotion in this film and in his filmmaking generally, because maybe that's underappreciated.
I think it is. I just went back and they did a re-release of Interstellar on IMAX, which is an extraordinary experience. And I hadn't seen the film on a big screen since it came out. And I think probably had my first experience was spent figuring out like what times, like what was happening. The viewing of the movie, probably post working with him and getting to know him a little better, that movie is deeply emotional. That movie is about a father being pulled away from his family because he is driven to do something in his life that he has no choice, but that choice comes with consequence and sacrifice. And it is so emotional, and it hadn't occurred to me on the first viewing, again, because, he keeps your mind and your brain so busy, trying to figure it all out, that the emotion, I think, is underestimated.
Yes. A number of the films, I think, are about loss and about the loss that we create for ourselves.
Yeah,
sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Just such a dilemma.
Yeah, and with Oppenheimer, same kind of thing. First of all, it's one of the biggest, American stories or global stories, sort of never told in that way, and the moral dilemma, it was front and center of it, of course. And I think that the last scene of the film is really emotional because it makes you sit with, again, the consequences of actions. And then also the journey of Oppenheimer through the story and what happened to him and the way that he was treated was really tragic. The relationship with him and his wife and his children, a man driven to do something. He was incapable of doing it any other way than the way he did it. But it came at a cost, and it came at a real price and sacrifice. And I think those things are really emotional.
They're powerful, 'cause I think any of us can relate to that.
Exactly.
Since you're here and since we're talking about Christopher, I have to ask, what can you tell us about the Odyssey?
It's the Odyssey.
That's all you can tell us.
And Matt Damon's starring in it.
Okay. I've done my job. Universal's been around as a studio for 113 years. Your library of beloved intellectual property is staggering. During the pandemic with my family, because I'm a film nerd, we watched some of the horror classics from the 1930s. You've got the Spielberg blockbusters like Jurassic Park. You've got the Minions series now. How do you think about making the most of Universal's IP while also supporting original storytelling?
Well, I think this summer tells the tale quite well. We have the number 2 and number 3 highest grossing movies of the summer with Jurassic World and How to Train Your Dragon, the live action version, which Peter Kramer is here in the audience. I give him full credit for having the idea to mine the library and go into the DreamWorks library and take that animation classic and create that experience in a live action expression, which has worked really well for us. And you mentioned Jurassic, working with Steven over the course of this iteration of the franchise has been really thrilling and obviously really good business for us. But the library is really important. It drives a huge piece of it underpins the financials of our business. Obviously, we license our library out all over the world, over and over and over again. I mentioned DreamWorks. When we bought DreamWorks Animation, it's a treasure trove of really wonderful IP and franchises, and that library accounts for about 25% of our licensing year over year. So it's very powerful for us. But the ways that we exploit it are, across film and television, and it's also a good source of inspiration. Sometimes we'll just go back and take a look at things and remind ourselves of where we came from. The monster films and things like that,
which are great.
Yeah.
Is there a formula to that balance between IP, titles that are new films and original stories? Or is it instinct again?
You know, we have a framework of the way that we build our slate. And the way that we look at it, we never want to be too overly invested in one thing or another. We always want our slate over the course of 12 months to be underpinned by animation. You know, it's something that works theatrically really well. And at least one sort of all-audience film, and sometimes two, so that will be a Jurassic or a Fast and Furious. And then there's the everything else bucket, where, you know, we can have anything from a mix of horror to comedy, although that's sort of up and down at the moment, you know, to original films. But original storytelling and original films, they've just always worked for us. They've always been good business for us. And because we're not slavish about, you know, price point, budgets, we'll look at everything as its own kind of business model and enterprise, you know, and price it appropriately and put it together in a way that we think can work. You know, so that's sort of how we approach the slate.
Is that 4-quadrant model, young, old, male, female, does that still hold, or is the landscape more complicated now?
I think it's more complicated than that now. You know, again, you look at a movie like Wicked, it's behaving like a 4-quadrant movie, but it's, you know, it's heavily female. And yeah, I think the audience is shifting under our, you know, as in front of our eyes as we speak.
Yeah. I want to ask you mentioned Fast and the Furious franchise, which I absolutely love. Again, family viewing over the pandemic, watched all of them. That series is both wildly entertaining, wildly successful globally, but also wildly diverse and inclusive. It never makes a point of that, though. And I wonder, how did you manage to do all of those things at once? Because sometimes we're told that if you want to be inclusive in your storytelling, that you're going to lose something, but you didn't here.
Well, if you go all the way back to the first movie, and we have to go all the way back to Vin Diesel, you know, who is, he brings the thinking of inclusivity into everything that he does very organically. And I mean, his company is called One Race. And he was thinking about that in ways that the rest of the industry was not, way, way, way before. And so, yeah, Fast and Furious is, you know, it's just organically inclusive. And the way that it was cast, it was never a conversation about it. And it's sort of, the world kind of caught up to the franchise in a way. But, you know, it has its roots in Los Angeles, in, you know, downtown LA, in car culture, you know, which is the domain largely of people of color, of the Hispanic community, and it honors it and I think celebrates it in a really beautiful way. And yeah, it's been a very organic process, but it is, you know, Vin is very much the leader of that.
And as the franchise expanded in budget and scale and everything else, and began going to Brazil, to the Gulf, to Europe, was that a part of a strategy as well to really engage audiences around the world?
Yeah, it was. As we saw the popularity growing, after Tokyo Drift, we made a conscious decision. That's number 3, for those of you who are not aware, directed by Justin Lin. And after that, between 4 and 5 is when we made a conscious decision to pivot to a sort of a globe-trotting heist type scenario. We knew we had to. The audience was there for us and growing. And it also coincided with social media, and Vin was an early adopter of talking to his fans directly. And as we saw that growing, and we saw where the conversation was going, we've always been sort of very fan first on the Fast franchise. You know, Vin will sort of throw out little things about, oh God, don't kill Letty. Oh, okay, we'll bring her back. She never died. Yes. Don't worry, nothing to see here. Yes. But that's all kind of led by the fan engagement. And so, yeah, we we knew that we had to figure out how to grow it, so we shifted genre. So it went away from being a kind of counter car culture film to cars flying between buildings.
Right. Yes.
And
Ultimately,
sorry that we sent them to space. That was a mistake. That's a big mistake.
I think every franchise needs one of them like that.
Yeah. We can never get that genie back in the bottle, unfortunately.
Do you have a favorite among the films?
Oh yeah, 7.
7.
Yeah.
I'm 5.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Yes.
5 is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, I know that you're very committed to the theatrical experience, and a growing part of that now is large format cinema, IMAX in particular, IMAX having been born in Canada, not sure if everyone's aware. The very first purpose-built IMAX cinema in the world is the Cinesphere that's just down the road from here as well, opened in 1971. So we've seen this boom, and it's not just in North America, it's global as well, massive expansion in places like China. How far do you see that kind of the theatrical experience growing in the future?
I think it's huge, actually. I mean, we've already seen in the last 12 months the over-indexing of ticket sales in IMAX and then large format with the other theater chains. What we're seeing is, you could probably all relate to this. I mean, I know I can as an audience member. First of all, you want value for money. So if you're going to spend $15 on a ticket, you'll spend $25 on a ticket to go and have that premium, pristine experience. And so we're seeing that happen. We're also seeing with young people, the letterbox generation.
Yes.
Who are really engaged in film, in cinema. We saw it on Oppenheimer. Going to this theater more than once, coming back, having an opinion, wanting to share that opinion. Budding cinephiles, it's really wonderful, but they want to have that premium experience. So it's really important. Of course, it's opportunity, and it comes with its challenges now because we're all in a rugby scrum with our competitors around, who gets those IMAX screens opening weekend, and for how many weeks can you get them? And again, it sort of goes back to working with a filmmaker like Christopher Nolan, who's had an amazing relationship with IMAX, and so the Odyssey is shot with IMAX cameras, and it'll be incredible in that experience. But yeah, so it's definitely trending that way.
I want to ask you more about that young letterboxed generation, as we're now calling it, because we've seen the same thing. We have an art house multiplex TIFF Lightbox here, 5 screens. We're running them all year round. We can play every format, including 70 millimeter, and we find that young audience, I'd say under 35, comes out most for 70 millimeter, 35 millimeter, 4K restorations, all of those things that really heighten the theatrical experience. And I don't fully understand where that young audience came from, because they grew up after some of these technologies had already been wound down. Where do you see that audience coming from?
Well, I think, there's a couple of data points that we have. So when we were, in the marketing window for Oppenheimer, Chris's son convinced him to do a TikTok. Chris
Nolan did a TikTok?
Yeah, it's amazing.
I have to
it's
find
amazing.
That.
And he's talking to an influencer on TikTok. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but he's a cinephile, very knowledgeable. But it's almost like a sort of a pupil and professor conversation around the 70 millimeter spool, talking about the technology of it, how it works, how it gets loaded, and it is extraordinary.
Yeah.
Actually,
If you've never seen a platter of 70 millimeter film as it's being projected, you haven't
really
fully
wonderful.
lived. I'll say that.
So this thing went crazy, and people were really engaging with it, and so that was one thing. And then we when we announced the Odyssey this summer, and we put the little teaser on Jurassic, at the same time we put some tickets on sale a year in advance.
And they're all gone now.
Yeah, and they all sold out. So again, that's another indication that people. I just feel like people are looking for a great experience. And they want, again, like it's value for money and value for time. If you're going to make this investment, you know, it's not dissimilar to, I think, the people, you know, wanting to. It's all about share of wallet. They're going to go and have an experience. It's a you know, go to a concert, live music, live sports, if you can, you know, gain access to it. And I think cinema is the same thing. It's very tactile.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know that it's a nostalgia play per se, but I think there's just something about the artistry and the authenticity of it.
Yeah. And as you're thinking through and planning marketing for some of these major global releases, how do you think now about the social side of that? Letterboxd is people just talking to each other. It's not traditional marketing at all, but once you let people know that there is going to be a new Christopher Nolan film, they generate their own conversation. And how does that figure into your plans?
Well, we just have to let it go. I mean, you cannot manufacture that. It has to be authentic. You know, I think any good marketing team knows, you know, you have to, obviously can provide the assets and get the information to the right people, you know, who hopefully you can evangelize on your behalf. But they have to be people who are talking to the audience directly. We can't do that. You know, a couple of years ago, we had a Minions film in release, and this craze took off. It just so happened, I think it started in Australia. There were some kids who were coming from their graduation wearing suits, going to the multiplex.
Right. I read about this. I did not understand it.
Okay, and so they started this whole thing of going to see Minions wearing a suit, and you know, but these were kids who had seen the first Minions movie, which is about 15 years old, or Despicable Me movie, in, you know, as kids, and now they were teenagers growing up, and they were, you know, and we had nothing to do with that. I mean, that just took off. There was also a song that was in the trailer that wasn't in the movie. That was a DJ and an artist that, you know, just, you know, resonated with the younger audience. And so again, we followed it. But if we tried to manufacture that, you know, we would have been told to buzz off.
Yes.
You know,
it's not possible to create a viral moment.
It's really not.
Yeah.
It's really not.
Huh. You just have to be.
So it's great when it happens.
Ready.
And you have to be ready. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. I want to ask you about talent development, which I know NBCUniversal does quite a lot of, and we're partnering with you and with Jordan Peele's company Monkey Paw on the No Drama initiative, which we're really excited about. We had the launch of those short films yesterday. So yeah, some of you may be here. I want to ask you why those kinds of talent development initiatives are important to you, but I maybe want to go back to your original love of storytelling. I know you're a big reader, and when it comes to finding new talent, what is it in you that's driving that urge?
I just get so excited about it. You know, when you meet somebody who has a story to tell and matched by talent, there's just nothing better. And you know, being fortunate enough and privileged enough to work in an environment and work at a place that has resources to put towards that energy and talent, it's just a great feeling. It really is. You know, it's not altruistic. It's business. But there's just nothing more thrilling. I mean, you mentioned Jordan Peele and being along for that ride. You know, that was a film that was brought to us by Jason Blum, and Jordan fully made almost, you know, almost finished. And just watching that thing take off with the support of our distribution mechanism, our marketing, you know, whatever support was required or asked for, you know, on the development and production side. It was just thrilling. It really is. I mean, I can't describe it. It's a great feeling.
Do you still get the opportunity to seek out new voices, whether they're novelists, storytellers of any kind, debut filmmakers yourself, or are people bringing these things to you now?
Yeah, well, we were with 5 of them last night, you know,
okay,
at the
yes,
No Drama. I have to say, I mean, it's just so great to be here at a film festival and to feel the energy. It's palpable, just walking around the streets. And then, you know, being at that screening, I hadn't seen any of those films. And just, again, watching the expression of someone's work experience, life experience, and imagining being in their shoes and what it must feel like at this point in their careers, to have these short films now, is a calling card to go out into the world. It really is. It's thrilling. It's a business that we're all in. Yes, it's complicated, it's challenging, it's complex, but at the end of the day, it just all comes down to simple things like a great story well told.
Did you ever have the desire yourself to be a storyteller?
No.
Why not?
I don't think I'm way better at telling other people what to do.
Yes, obviously so. You've been doing so well. This new generation, the next generation of storytellers, are you seeing real differences in what kinds of stories they want to tell or how they want to tell those stories? Is there a kind of a step forward or a step in a different direction?
I feel like we might be on the cusp of something. I do think we're seeing it. We were actually having a conversation last night with Jason Blum about horror directors. Horror is taking a very interesting turn. We saw it last year with Focus Features film Nosferatu, Robert Eggers, who obviously is, made many brilliant films.
Yeah.
But the success of that film demonstrates that there's a shift in the audience taste. And there's also been a shift, and so we've seen it with horror, whether it's Weapons, Zach Cregger's brilliant film, or Sinners with Ryan Coogler, Longlegs. We're seeing the shift in horror and auteur directors turning to horror, and not horror that maybe we as we came to know it over the last decade. I'm going to take Jordan Peele and Night out of that equation, but sort of more conventional horror in a way. It's the weirder the better.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think we're seeing this shift. I think it's a general cultural shift. It's a generational shift. And then I'm curious to see how emerging technology, which is a euphemism for AI, is going to take that shift even further with how people can access storytelling tools ethically, and what that's what's that going to do? I feel like we're just on the cusp of a shift.
Is it internet culture that's driving that kind of push towards maybe a new vanguard for horror, do you think?
Maybe. I think it's that, and I just think it's the culture in general.
Interesting.
I mean, what else is there that we could be anxious about and scared about? We've just got to up the ante on all of that. It's just going to get weirder and more horrifying.
Okay. Not sure I'm ready, but
well, because horror is always a reflection of our times.
Yeah. So we've talked about horror, we've talked about action franchises, we've talked about comedy, of course. Is there a universal strategy for romance?
Yes, we just made a great film based on a Colleen Hoover novel. And it is actually something, well, first of all, I'll say a lot of our younger executives will often come and say, when are we going to make a rom-com? When are we going to make the next great rom-com? I think. So we're always looking for a great one. We may have, us older folk, might have a bias against it because it was such a staple of our formative years, and
90s.
We had some brilliant ones. We had Nora Ephron and Nancy Myers, and so I think the bar is set very high for that. But I think I'm kind of loving this kind of lean into melodrama. Again, it's sort of feeling all the feels and being unabashed about how kind of sappy we can go. And how tragic we can go. I think it's because I think they're big emotions, and I think those things provide a real catharsis for the audience. So we are looking for more of that kind of material.
Is that some of the white space that you were talking about earlier?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's great to hear. I want to end by asking you about what it meant to you in 2020 when you were awarded a Dame Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. I love that, by the late Queen Elizabeth. And then after the pandemic, the actual honor was awarded to you by King Charles. And as that girl from an outsider family on the Isle of Wight, what did it mean to you to receive that honor?
It meant a huge amount, actually. You know, it would be easy to be cynical about something like that, as is the English way. But I'm not. It was a huge honor to be recognized by my country that I haven't lived in for a very long time. And by Queen Elizabeth, who, you know, was my queen and grew up, you know, she came to visit our school when I was 7 years old, and I never forgot it. It's not something that you aspire to. It's not something that you can lobby for. I remember at the time when I got the letter, my son, who was quite young at the time, said, "Mom, is this something that you wanted your whole life?" I was like, "No, you don't grow up thinking that you're going to be this." And on a, you know, just a very personal note, my mom passed away almost 2 years ago, and the ceremony itself, she couldn't come to, sadly. She wasn't well enough, but we all had a family lunch afterwards, and it was sort of the last gathering that we had with her, and you know, and it meant so much to her.
She must have been so proud of you.
She was, yeah. She told all of her friends, and the local newspaper on the Isle of Wight, embarrassingly, but so yeah, no, it really did. It meant a huge amount to me.
Donna, thank you so much for spending
Thank
the
you.
time with you. It's been a great
Wonderful.
conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for everything you're doing. Donna Langley.